Do you know what I like most about chess? That every game is different from the last one. So when we sit down at the board, no one, absolutely no one, can predict what's going to happen in that game. And we'll have to think for ourselves how to achieve victory. What I'm going to teach you today is really going to make you enjoy it a lot. Because you already know that I'm always doing the research work to bring you the best openings, the best games, to analyze them here on this channel. We start with this game that was played at the Olympiad with knight to f3 by the white pieces. As you can see, it's an opening called the ready opening, which might not be the most popular in the world, especially among amateurs, since we're used to playing either king's pawn or queen's pawn. The idea behind the move knight to f3 is that it's very flexible, and we can adapt to whatever our opponent plays. This game continued with d5. The player with the white pieces played g3, fianchettoing his bishop. He didn't want any trouble for now. Knight to f3, bishop to g2. As I was saying in the introduction, if someone is just starting to watch this game, they might think this game is going to be really slow, boring, maybe very peaceful, because they're locking things up here on the king side. However, as we've said, nobody knows how a chess game is going to end when it begins. The game continues as follows. G6. The player with the black pieces does the same. C4. Striking at the center right away. You already know that the best weapon to challenge the d-pawn is always the c-pawn. Make sure to remember that. C6 to defend. And now the player with the white pieces decides the following. I'm going to play b3, because that way I'll be able to line up my dark squared bishops against each other. In this case, white is going for a double fianchetto setup. You already know that when the bishops come out to either g2 or b2, that's called fianchettoing the bishop. The game continues as follows. Bishop to g7, and white must quickly play bishop to b2. Why? Because otherwise there are very strong discovered attacks being threatened against the rook on a 1. Therefore, bishop to b2, white is just in time for both black's and white's castling. This part, as you know, I'll go through a little bit faster, because where the real fun and excitement begins is in the next moves. Black realizes this is a really good idea, what I'm about to say. Now, white has a pawn chain structure here, and they need to break it with a 5. This move is preparing a possible a4 in the future, breaking up this pawn chain and creating loose weaknesses, something very interesting to later put pressure on. Also, is the 5 serves another purpose. Do you know what it is? It slows down white's possible expansion a bit. Take a look. Look at everything we're learning from a single game. White's idea was the following. I'm going to play knight to c3 and check out this beautiful move from black, who took advantage of the fact that the bishop on b2 is undefended. Be careful. Many times you might think, well, it's undefended, but it can't be attacked. Chess is full of wonders. Pay attention to this move. Knight to e4. What is this knight doing? Logically, it's threatening this knight, but the knight on c3 can't capture because then the bishop on b2 would be lost, right? So white has to respond with a move other than knight takes knight. And they do it like this. Knight to a4. Let me explain why this is such a good idea. You can use these strategic concepts in your own games, you know? What the player with the white pieces is doing now is confronting both fianchettoed bishops, but be careful. The black fianchettoed bishop is more important than the white one. Why is that? Because it's the defender of the king side. If this bishop disappears, and it will disappear because it doesn't have a good way out, just imagine that its only escape is this one here. This bishop would end up pretty much out of play, and white could control this whole diagonal with the light squared bishop. That's why the player with the black pieces trades this bishop for the one on b2, and then knight for b2. Pay attention to this. Now, black's kingside is going to be in a lot of trouble. And in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to take advantage when your opponent's castling has pushed one of their pawns forward. What's the problem here? A lot of weaknesses have been created, because since the pawns are on light squares, the dark squares have become extremely weak. Therefore, the game continues as follows. Knight to d7, d3, threatening the knight. That wouldn't be a good idea. I'm sure many of you are thinking about knight to c3 here, but that would be a really bad idea, because simply with a move like queen to 2, this knight would be completely trapped and couldn't be saved. So be careful about walking into the lion's den because it often has negative consequences. Knight to f6. And now black is threatening something. Do you know what they're threatening? It's not a tactical threat, but a strategic one, taking control of the center. Haven't we said many times on this channel how important it is to control the center? What is black threatening? e5, do you see it? How can we prevent it? By playing d4, by placing our own pawn in the center and also preventing black from doing the same. A very, very good move. Very good. Black needs to develop this bishop. They can't do it on this side, so they play b6 to develop it along this other shorter diagonal here. Rook to c1, an excellent move because it threatens to open up with d5. And also, this rook ends up occupying the open file all by itself. You already know that a rook on an open file is a real weapon, a very hard to stop attacking piece. The game continues with bishop to b7, knight to d3. Both knights are vying to defend one of the best squares on the board, which is the central d5 square. You know that whoever controls the center controls the game, and now this d5 square is controlled by a pawn and both knights. So here, black is going to have a pretty tough time giving it up. Rook to c8. Black does exactly the same, not wanting to fall behind white on that file. And now the knight from d to f moves to e5. A spectacular move. The idea here is that this knight is incredibly powerful, so black tries to get rid of it. What's the most logical move here? To capture with the knight. But what did white do? Showing great judgment? They captured with the pawn. Although, if you probably ask your inhuman friends, the machines, they'll tell you the best move is knight takes knight, placing a central knight on the advanced e5 square and without doubling pawns. The move d takes e5. It has a strategic concept that at least makes it worth considering. The idea is that when we place a wedge on e5, probably those of you who like to read chess books, you've seen this concept more than once. The wedge on e5. Because what it does is eliminate the best defender of the kingside castle. The best defender of the kingside castle is the knight on f6, not only because it defends the h7 square, but also because it guards the entry points on both h5 and g4. Therefore, now, after the knight retreats, this square here can be reinforced, for example in the future with f4. And it's going to become very strong, with the idea that the knight will never be able to return to defend the kingside castle. So logically, this move had to be considered. Bishop takes e5. Do you get it? Very interesting, right? Queen to d2, with the idea of bringing the queen in through the dark squares. You see? It's really fascinating that when the defending bishop is gone, you should try to bring your pieces in through here. Also, when you only have one bishop and it's on the light squares, try to place your queen on the dark squares, because that way, between the two, you'll cover all the squares on the board. This is a question you ask me very often. I know that when I develop all my pieces, I need to develop the queen to connect the rooks. However, I never know where to develop her. In this case, it would be extremely simple. We have two squares, c2 and d2. One is white and the other is black, so logically, since the bishop is on a white square, we'll develop the queen to d2. Plus, if we include the idea that we want to enter through h6, it makes even more sense. The idea here is that now, logically, black can't just sit still and do absolutely nothing because the threats are very serious. Bringing in the queen, strengthening the center with f4. Honestly, white's position is enviable, so black has to react, and they do it very well. The black pieces. They're really playing a fantastic game, but you'll see that there's going to be a mistake that will be their downfall. A complete one. The idea is that this d takes c4 at least gives the player with the black pieces some room to maneuver. How would you capture? With the pawn or with the rook? The correct answer is to capture with the rook. Because if we capture with the pawn, this c-pawn would be completely isolated and would be a very easy target for attack. Also, the rook would be completely blocked by the pawn. Therefore, without a doubt, capturing with the rook is the best option we have right now. Not just for all the reasons I mentioned, but also because it can join the attack, for example, via h4. The idea is that when we move out to the middle of the battlefield with the queen and the rooks, which are the heavy pieces, we need to keep something very important in mind, that they can't be attacked easily. In this case, for example, they could attack us with this move, but that would be extremely bad, since it would give us a lot of time to play. Rook to h4 and queen to h6, and as you can see, checkmate would be completely unstoppable. So, one way or another, they have to do something. And black, with exceptional judgment, makes a tactical maneuver that honestly is very beautiful. Knight takes on e5. They're not just giving away the knight because they're taking advantage of the fact that it's completely pinned by the queen from d8. Right now, this queen, since it's not defended, is being attacked by X-ray from black's queen. So be careful because here, black has found a good solution to win a pawn and to eliminate the e5 wedge. And not only that, but they're also threatening our major pieces. In this case, they're threatening the rook. But anyway, the player with the white pieces had this well thought out and sacrificed the pawn on purpose in exchange for the initiative. Rook to h4. Beautiful, isn't it? Probably a lot of you want to watch this game more than once. I recommend you save it because if you don't, later you won't know how to find it. So down here, you can save it to watch as many times as you need. The idea is obvious now, right? What do the white pieces want to do? Bring the queen in and try to checkmate on h7. So there's only one possible move to stop this, and that's h5. Any other move loses immediately. You get it, right? Alright, the attack continues with rook to d1, so now taking the knight is actually a threat because the queen is already defended. So black plays knight takes d3 here. What move would you play here? Well, I'm sure most of you are debating between capturing with the queen or capturing with the pawn. The truth is, neither of the two is good. If we capture with the queen, we're down a pawn, and then they'd trade queens, and we'd end up in an endgame a pawn down, which is really bad, especially when there are only a few pieces left on the board. On the other hand, capturing with the pawn would also be a bad idea, because we'd simply end up with this isolated pawn, which would be extremely easy to attack with the rooks and the queen along the d-file right from the front. You already know that the best way to attack an isolated pawn is always from the front. So here, if I'm not going to recapture the knight with the queen, and I'm not going to recapture it with the pawn, what should I do? Am I down a piece? No, because now simply by moving the queen away, for example, thank you, queen to h6, the knight, we're going to recover it anyway, taking advantage of the fact that the knight is completely pinned by the rook and threatened by the pawn. So there's nothing they can do to save that knight. Queen to d6, rook takes d3. As you can see, they've already recovered the piece here. White is down a pawn, but in return, they have a very strong initiative, so the game is pretty balanced. One side has more material, and the other has more initiative. What should white go for to launch a deadly attack? What should black go for to keep things quiet so they can reach an endgame with an extra pawn? The game continues with queen to f6, pulling the threatened queen back, and now bishop to e4. Obviously, you can see what the player with the white pieces is doing, right? Trying to bring all the pieces into the attack, fully understanding what the position calls for. It's really important that you understand what the position requires. When we open the Chess Teacher Academy, where you'll be able to take classes every week, you'll start to understand all these things. For now, the Academy isn't open yet, but it's getting close. This is the first time I'm mentioning it on the channel, so if you're watching this video, you're getting the scoop. The idea here is that black is looking for some kind of counterplay. With bishop to a6, the best active move in the position, a bishop that wasn't doing anything before. And on top of that, it threatens the rook. But the important thing isn't just that it threatens the rook, but also it creates some really strong threats. Probably a lot of you are thinking the following: well, I just move it away and attack the queen. This is great for me. You would lose the game on the slot. For example, it would continue with queen to 1 check, the king moves, the bishop captures on e2. Not only is the rook being threatened, but also checkmate on f1, and there's no way to stop it. So you'd be making an extremely serious mistake. Therefore, here, after this move, bishop to a6, the rook can't come to f3. You see the cunning behind this move, bishop to a6? You have to check everything before you move, even if the moves seem obvious. So you need to defend this pawn on e2, and you have to move the rook. Therefore, rook to e3 logically seems like the best move in this position. Queen to g7. What would you do if you were in the shoes of the player with the white pieces? Would you trade queens or not? Of course not. That would be a serious mistake. If we trade queens, we'll be left without an attack, and therefore we'll lose the endgame being a pawn down. For all of you who are more professional or want to improve a lot more, you need to understand that in this type of position, when you're offered some kind of exchange to reach an endgame, you should look at the pawn structure. remove all the pieces. We'll see 4 versus 4 here. Nothing special, but 3 versus 2 makes it really easy for black to get a passed pawn here. Easy, eh? With 3 versus 2. So with the exchanges, they create a passed pawn. We absolutely don't want to trade queens. You get it, right? Queen to g5. The rook on c activates on the open file, on d1, on d8. You already know that open files are extremely good for rooks, and here the black player has made a concession. He said, well, if you want, take back the pawn. I'm giving it back to you again. It's not really a pawn sacrifice because I'm just returning it to you. But in exchange, what I'm doing is getting my rook and queen onto the back rank, and you're going to have a really tough time. Logically, here I suppose white captures. They thought for quite a while and decided to capture the pawn on e7, accepting the sacrifice. Impressive. This sacrifice, or rather this pawn offer, white does very well to accept it. Why? Because now they've regained the material and have a very good plan to get out of the way of black's attacking pieces. King to g2, the queen comes in on a1 with what look like deadly threats, right? With rook to g1 and all that. And do you know what move the player with the white pieces makes here? Cold-blooded, huh? Bishop takes c6, wins a pawn. Let me explain why. The idea for white, I assure you, isn't to win a pawn just to be up a pawn, because it's clear the black's attack is deadly. Instead, they understand that in this game, whoever manages to launch the decisive attack first is gonna win, right? Yes or no? So here they realize something. If white wants to launch a decisive attack, it's crucial to control with this bishop. This diagonal here, so that this king is completely out of play. You'll see how important this is. You'll see. So they remove the pawn on c6, not to win a pawn, but so that now the d5 square is open. You get it, right? The game continues here because now comes the best part. Rook to g1 check. The king escapes via f3. And you're probably thinking the same thing I am. The move queen to f1, which is what black played, looks devastating. The queen comes in through g2. This king will probably have no way out. But here, white played a move that still gives me goosebumps. A move that the player with the white pieces probably never saw coming. And I would have loved to see the look on his face when the white player made that move. King to f1. Moving the king toward the center of the board. Impressive, right, friends? And on top of that, giving up this pawn on f2, and with check, they're back to having equal material. But now it looks like black has a devastating attack. The white king is in the center. Do you know what white's plan was? And it's a crushing plan that can't be stopped anymore. King to g5. And the idea is to attack with the king to h6, and the checkmate becomes unstoppable. What do you think about this? Have you ever seen an attack like this before? Incredible, right? Right now, the threat is obvious. King to h6 and mate here, I can assure you it would be absolutely unstoppable. For example, if black now decides to make a move that doesn't do anything, like let's say I imagine bishop to c8, just to name one, the king would simply come in through h6, and then the queen, she could come in through here, and also the rooks. And it would be absolutely unstoppable, and that's why black very wisely plays king to g7. So what's the idea now? Even so, white is still winning. Pay attention. Rook to f4. It attacks the queen and also puts pressure on the f7 square. The queen captures on h2. At this point, we don't care if we lose an extra pawn because we're going for checkmate. Queen to f6, check. King to h7. And here comes the spectacular bombshell that you want to see. If you want, you can pause the video to try to find it, especially those of you who are a bit more experienced. And if you're not, that's totally fine too. It's also good to pause and think, because even if you don't find it, your brain is still trying to work out the possibilities. And then when you see the solution, you'll understand why it's the answer, and you'll learn it much better, because you've already done the thinking exercise. Remember here that we're being threatened with rook takes check, and that would probably be fatal, so we need to respond forcefully with checks. The brutal move is queen takes g6, sacrificing the queen. Obviously, the queen can't be captured because then the following would happen. If pawn takes, then first comes rook to e7, check. If the king comes here, it's mate, and if the king goes to g8, this is important, the bishop can move to d5, remember the pawn, and now, when the king moves away, rook takes f8 would be checkmate. You see? so obviously this queen can't be captured. So, what should black do here? Well, there's nothing else to do but move the game. But when the king moved away, white simply finished with a brilliant move, which was the following: king to h6. And now checkmate is absolutely unstoppable, whether on g7 or h7. And if they decide to take the queen, then rook takes f8, checkmate. What did you think? Impressive or not? Awesome. If you want more videos like this, subscribe to the channel and you'll get one every day, a free video. And if you want more free content, you can subscribe to the newsletter. I'll leave the link down below in the description, where every day, sorry, not every day, every Sunday, I'll upload something for you. Exclusive content just for subscribers, and I'll send it to you by email. I hope you loved this video. Leave a big like if you want more videos like this, and I'll see you tomorrow in the next one, friends. Goodbye.